Night Industry 2000's microprocessor, KITT for easy reference, KITT if you prefer.
It's all about Knight Rider, when I have the huge pleasure of talking to Knight Rider, second unit director, stunt coordinator and stuntman, Jack Gill. For this conversation, we've picked some of the most memorable stunts, and Jack will tell us a lot about how they were done. So enjoy this conversation with stunt legend Jack Gill. Hello, Jack.
Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm good. Everything's good.
Yeah, great. I'm so happy that you had the time to do yet another talk about your stunt work on Knight Rider. I think this is such a great setting with the scenes that you and I chose, and yeah, so I'm sure it's gonna be great.
Oh, good. Yep.
Okay, great. Then let's hit it off, Jack. It's so wonderful to have you here again and talk about this show. Knight Rider had its 42nd birthday yesterday, but it's this hobby is still going strong. A lot of people building their own replicas, and now we all love to hear about the behind the scenes, about how was the stunts made. So let's play the first scene here. And I might start by asking you, did you have anything to say in regards to this being General Lee, or at least a copy of General Lee?
I mean, the whole time I was on Knight Rider, everybody knew that I had come straight from Dukes of Hazzard. And so, it was kind of a comical thing to kind of prod me about, oh yeah, he was into General Lee and now he's in KITT. And, so I was always compared to, what are we doing here, and what are we doing about General Lee, and why, what are the changes? And then one of the producers came up and said, we should do a parody about that, because since Jack is in the Knight Rider car and we're doing so many more bigger things, let's think of a race that we can put together. So it kind of started as like a comical thing of them just kind of kidding me about driving the General Lee. And then the more and more we talked about it, the more and more the producers and the writers got together and say, let's make a race out of it. And then the next thing we knew is they said, do you think you can jump over the General Lee while we're moving? And we said, well, sure, we can probably do that too. So, it became, starting out as just a little idea that became into a real notion, and that they put in the actual show. And it was one of the jumps that was probably the most critical of the time, because the timing was so tough to figure out, because Mike Tillman was driving the General Lee, one of the stunt guys, and he had to swerve in front of the ramp just as I was hitting the ramp. And I knew that I was going to lose probably 5 to 6 miles an hour when I hit the ramp. So I have to go at least 5 or 6 miles an hour faster than what I normally go so that I can clear him. And he can't be in front of the ramp sooner or later, or the shot doesn't work. So luckily, we did it in one take, and I got over the top of him and landed on the other side. But, the timing was very, very critical and tough to do.
Yeah. Let's just see also, we're going to return to the turbo boost, of course. Let's just see this explosion. Can you talk about how do you make an explosion like that?
Well, I mean, they towed the car in with nobody in it. And then the special effects department put in the big explosions. And as they towed it in, they had a stop cable on it so it wouldn't go too far. So they're towing it in, and then it stops. And then the effects guys have a button that's all remote control to blow it all up. So, it was essentially what they were saying is that this thing was powered by, some moonshine or something.
Exactly. It was run on moonshine. Yeah. Now we're going to take the turbo boost once again in slow motion here. How do you prepare for a turbo boost like this? And also, can you talk about the decision on how to mount the cameras? Where do they go?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this was a place called Templin Highway that we shot on a lot. And it was a long straight road that really wasn't traveled much up in, it's near Valencia, California. And It takes us from the studios. It's probably a 45-minute to an hour drive from where Universal Studios to get to this area. But once we got there, we have complete control of the street. It's long and straight. And we did a lot of stunts out there. And so setting the ramp up, when we set the ramp up, we did a thing with putting a mirror next to the ramp and tilting it down a little bit. So when the camera sees where the ramp is, it's looking at a mirror, which is reflected into the pavement. So you can't really see the ramp, which was a great idea. And once we did that, we had to do timing runs. And so I would get in the kit car, go back to number one, and Mike Tim would get in the General Lee and go back next to me. And we would get up to where I knew I had to be to make the jump. And then he would say, I would swerve over now. And we'd say, okay, that would have worked or that wouldn't have worked. And we did about 3 of them till we got up there and said, okay, we're going to go for it. Now, this was in the middle of the summer and it was really, really hot. And I don't really get tied into my safety harness until right before we go. So all of these rehearsal runs we're doing with no helmet on and just coming up at the ramp. And I go by the ramp and he goes by the ramp. And we've got some of other stunt guys out there looking at it from the side saying, yeah, it would have worked, or no, it wouldn't have worked, or, you've got to go a little faster. Those kind of things are always helpful because me being in the car, I can kind of tell whether he's in the right position or not, because when I'm coming in, he has to be just off my right front bumper when he's swerving in. Because if he's behind me, it's not going to work. I'm going to be up in the air and he's not going to be underneath me. So he has to be a little bit ahead of me when he swerves in. And then he's got to be really close to the ramp, because if he gets too far out, I'm going to land on him. So it's really, really critical to try and make this all work as one. And, like I say, we did it in 1 take. We were prepared to do it with 2 takes. Yeah. If I had landed on him, which he has a full cage in the car, still would have been a hard hit for both of us. But we did have 2 sets of cars in case we had to do it 2 times. But it worked out great.
Okay, let's just see. Let's just roll it again here. And we can see that the car has a metal plate below it.
Yeah, that was I put a skid plate on all of these cars because what would happen, we noticed in the past that when I land on asphalt like this, which most of the kit car jumps landings were on asphalt, is that if we didn't have a skid plate on the bottom, the muffler and whole exhaust would hit the ground and usually come off and come out behind the car. And then it just makes the whole jump look bad, because back then we couldn't CGI remove those kind of things. So, we put a big skid plate on it, which keeps anything that would fall out from under the car from coming off.
Yeah. We're just going to see the landing now. It seems kind of rough. I know you've done a lot of these, but do you remember this?
Yeah, this one hit pretty hard. You can see that it rebounds and bounces back up in the air, and I had made all 4 of the shock absorbers on every single tire super, super stiff. And I added a double set of shocks on the front and back end so that it was even more stiffer, because I wanted it to jump up high in the air. And so when you see it hit pretty hard. Luckily, I didn't go in nose first, so the front end survived, but it's a pretty hard hit on your body.
Yeah. I can imagine. So, yeah. A couple of pictures. Thanks for providing these great pictures, Jack. It's just
you can see how high the car got, and that's just because I had the suspension so tight on it that it kind of leaps off the ramp. And that view you see there was a camera mounted on the side of the car, angled a little down, really, really wide. And I wish I could have seen that from where I was driving, but I couldn't even see. All I could see was he wasn't out in front of me. So I knew he had to be underneath me somewhere, and so it was kind of a monumental jump for me.
Yeah. So we have a picture of you as well here in your jump harness.
Yeah.
Can you talk a bit more about the construction of this jump harness?
Yeah, it's more like a women's corset. If you could think of what that is, it goes around your rib cage and ties up tight around your rib cage, and then you have 2 big, huge spanner sets. They're more like webbing straps that go across your shoulders, and you tie yourself into the top of the car on bungee cords. So you wrap these bungee cords around the top of the roll bar cage, and then you tie it into a clip on these straps that go across your shoulder. And then the stunt guys, after you're tied tight to the ceiling, they didn't stretch the bungee cords out and put you in a 5-point safety harness to the seat. So now your body is suspended underneath your armpits, and when you hit the ground, the bungee stretches out and it keeps your back from compressing into the seat and breaking your back.
Yeah.
And it's still used today in all the jumps we do today, and it still works great. It's a wonderful design that we designed on Dukes of Hazzard when I jumped through the barn, and it's kind of lasted throughout the days. There's obviously been a lot of changes in the fact to make it a little easier to get in and out of. We've got clips now that are quick release clips. We've got usually clips in the front that are a little quicker, but it's essentially the same design.
Great. Let's move on to the next clip now. It should come up in just a second. But great picture and great insights on this monumental jump. This was one of the few night riders we saw in Denmark. Now this is from a nice and decent little town. A chase scene with a ski mode and a turbo boost through the alley at the end. What kind of preparations did you do before a scene like this? Now, this is not on a straight road. This is I think in Covina, perhaps.
Yeah, West Covina.
How did you get permission to do all this?
Well, in West Covina, they were very film friendly, so we shot there a lot, and we had this one section of the street that they would always let us have complete control of, and the ski mode was done obviously by Buzz Bundy, who was our ski guy, and Buzz, got to where he could do that almost flawlessly every single time. We very rarely had him, not be able to accomplish what he was doing, because that's exactly what he did. And I've tried it a couple of times and I could do it, but not in the kind of way that Buzz could do it. Buzz was just a genius at it. But like I say, in West Covina, they were really good about giving us what we needed and locking the streets down. And most of the public were really happy to get out there and watch us do all these things. So it was a lot of fun to shoot in West Covina. Okay.
For a scene like this, how much did you have to say regarding how many twists, how many turns do the cars take until we end up with this turbo boost? Is that all done by the screenwriters, or how's that done?
Yeah, I mean, it's all done with how much screen time you need. And we knew that to get this chase to work out, you're going to have to at least 3 or 4. And we probably shot 6 or 7 different turns to get to where we are. And then they edit it down to what they think works best, because you always have to give them more than what they really need. And, when we set this jump up, it was a really, really tight jump for me, because the side walls in the alley were pretty close to where the car was. And I have to land in an alley on the other side that's pretty tight as well. So, that's the difficult part about this jump.
Yeah, we're seeing it in slow motion now.
Yeah, you can see the other side. It looks like a tunnel I'm landing in on the other side. And so if I'm off, 6 inches on the ramp on one side, it's usually about 3 or 4 feet on the other side that I'm off, and I would probably hit the building on the other side. So what I like to do is make sure that I've got a really straight line coming into the ramp, and I've got the exact same speed, because I'm, jumping over, essentially cars in the middle of the street. But, we had this guy from UCLA or USC or somebody that came out there and tried to tell me that I couldn't do the jump because I wouldn't make it across the street. And he had all his calculations out and said there was no way I could do it. And they were going to shut us down. And luckily the producer stepped in and said, look, Jack's done these jumps a million times. We're going to let him do it. But he made us take the cars out of the intersection just so I wasn't jumping directly over them. And then after I made the jump, he was nowhere to be found. He left and didn't even, come back to say I was wrong. So I was dying to get out of the car and say I told you I could do it, but he wasn't there so I could talk to him.
When you did a chase sequence like the one we've just seen, how many takes did you usually use? Because I imagine that's you have to have the cars going by with cameras mounted. You also have to have the cars going by without cameras mounted, or is that simply a question of okay, we mount the cameras strategically correct, so we only need to do it once?
Yeah, I mean, you really have to program it out ahead of time and know that you're going to put every single camera you can get. And usually on these jump days, we had at least 5 cameras available to us. And so we would put as many cameras as we could out there, hoping that one of them will get the premier shot, because we just don't have the time or the money to do these things over and over and over. And you can see the way that this car came out, it came out kind of front end high. And so I could barely see the alley on the other side with the front end being that high. And so the only thing I could really see were the tops of the buildings. And I knew I was kind of in the right line going in. But when I hit on the other side, it was a really, really hard hit. And so I was really worried about something breaking on the other side.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on now. I think we got the next. Yeah, we have this piece of work. The first thing I want to ask you, because that has been kind of an issue for me for 40 years or so. The turn signal blackouts, they've been removed from the car in this turbo boost sequence. Do you remember if it was a general problem with the turn signal blackouts falling off? Or?
I mean, they never really stayed on the car that much. Every time, for some reason, we just couldn't get them to really do what they were supposed to do all the time. And so they were always trying to figure out how to keep it, because we're beating the car up pretty hardly every single shot. I'm either off-road with it or bouncing through intersections or doing something. And things do get a little loose as you're doing that. So there were always problems with things that were falling off the car. And, KITT is supposed to be indestructible, and you can't see things like that. So it was an ongoing issue to try and keep things on the car all the time.
Yeah.
I was losing hubcaps a lot. There were a lot of things like that.
Okay, let's move on now and take a look at this turbo boost. It's coming right up. And we're going to see that this is not a real Trans Am flying through the air. This is what Knight Rider historians call the flivver car,
which I hated. I hated that car.
I love when you say that.
It was a Volkswagen powered car that the producers, I don't know, they thought they could save money by getting a car that would jump, over and over and over without having to replace it. But the guy that came in that said he could design a car like that was not qualified to really know what jumps were. And so when it hit on the other side, it was just a complete disaster. It looked terrible, and it didn't last long. It lasted a couple or 3 episodes, and then that thing went away. But, it was a hard-hitting car, and it didn't really look like KITT, and, there were a lot of problems with it. And I don't know that it really saved them any money at all, because we were getting the cars for free from Pontiac for like $1. So, I don't know how they were thinking they were going to save money, but I really didn't like this car at all.
How was the decision process regarding which type of car to use for a jump? Because we've seen some turbo boosts where it's actually not a beaten up stunt car. We also have the flivver car, and we have some cars that are typically used for this this type of jumps. Was that entirely up to you deciding, okay, we have this jump, I want to use this car, or how did that work?
Well, that worked up until the point of where the flivver car came in. When it came in, it was a complete surprise to all of us that they were going to build this thing. And, I tried to tell them that this is not the way to go, but they wanted to try and save money and thought this was a perfect idea, but it never really congealed into what they thought it was really going to be. I mean, it was just a dune buggy, really a Volkswagen dune buggy with a plastic shell car on it, and it really didn't do what they wanted to do. And luckily, they saw the light after a few episodes and decided not to do that anymore. But it was a bad decision on the producer's part. I didn't really have much say so in it because it was a money decision. They wanted to try and save money, and in reality, it kind of bit them in the ass on the far end because everybody that was commenting on it said you can tell it looks like a KITT car.
Did you do turbo boosts in the Flivver car?
Yeah, I probably jumped that thing 4 or 5 times, but didn't like it. I mean, some of the tests I did out at Saga Speedway, the first jump we did, the shocks all blew through the shell and they all busted off and bent. And when we were trying to test it to jump it, it just never really jumped the way that they said it was going to jump. They wanted it to be like a trophy truck car, and it just was never that.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that when I was 10 years old back in 1986 and watched Knight Rider for the first time, I did not know about the Flivver car, and I could not see. I could see that at the front end of KITT acted kind of weird in a couple of jumps. We only saw 12 episodes on Danish television, but I did not know that it wasn't KITT flying through the air. So
yeah. It was simply to save money, is all it really was, and it didn't save them any money.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we just get a couple of more examples of the Flivver car and how it. These are a couple of outtakes that didn't make it to the show.
Yeah, you can see how the front end just kind of bows and.
I've never seen pictures. That's always surprised me. We have a picture of David. Sitting in the middle of the rubber shell that you put on top of the Trans Ams, but I've never seen pictures of the rubber shell of the full rubber shell that you must have used on the Flivver car. So I don't know what happened to that. So
yeah, it was those things. Even though we transported them and we would always slide it over the real car. It didn't really last that long because it was hard to pick up and hard to move, and so I'm sure that they probably disintegrated over time.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on, and this is a not turbo boost scene, action packed as well, of course. Michael getting into KITT now, and he has to board this aircraft from KITT. Can you talk a bit about how you would do a sequence like this? Do you remember it?
Yeah, I mean, this was a sequence that we put together that we needed to have KITT and the airplane really, really close together. But yet the airplane is so expensive, I can't hit it or damage it in any way. But yet they want the car really, really close to it. So I had to be really, really careful about, what I did around this thing. And then I had to talk to the pilot and say, you have to keep your speed constant. If you vary your speed at all, I'm going to hit you from behind because I'm trying to stay so close to you. And then when we did the transfer, I'm driving from the right-hand seat, blind driving, and we had Tim Gilbert, a stuntman, doubling Hasselhoff, coming out of the left-hand seat and climbing across and getting onto the airplane. So, it was that part right there. That's Tim Gilbert right there making the jump. And I've got to get him close enough that he can get onto the wing. And then that part right there is all Tim Gilbert. When you see Hasselhoff on there, we were towing the airplane.
Yeah.
And then he's got to climb across and then, get onto the actual tail section and fall onto the car. And, those shots were really hard to get right there because we're going so fast.
And where were you in KITT? Were you left side blind driving it?
Yeah, I was in the left side driving, and Tim's going to fall onto the hood, so I had to stay really, really close underneath him.
Yeah,
it was a tough sequence to get, and it was, one of those where the pilot was always worried about damage to the aircraft. So we had to do it sitting still to show him what we were going to do. And, those airplanes aren't cheap. So you always worry about, what you can do and what you can't do. But they were really generous about letting us have the time to test it.
Yeah. So, well, we get to probably the most famous turbo boost of the entire series, the Ravine turbo boost, and this is also an action chase, car chase sequence. Can you talk us through this? How were the preparations regarding this?
Well, originally when this thing was first thought about, they had seen all the other jumps that I'd done, and they saw the distances that I was getting, and they came in and said, we want you to jump over a big open ravine. And, I originally said, well, you know what the distances are, so if you can find a ravine that's close to that, then we'll take a look at it. But when I went and saw this ravine, one side of it is essentially a lot higher than the other side, and so you're dropping off onto a lower side. And it was a long way across, and the field coming in was uneven, and they wanted me to just drive down the field in the grass and hit the ramp, and I just couldn't get the traction. The grass was wet in the mornings, and there was just no way I could get the speed. So that's when we said we're going to have to bring a bulldozer in and cut a kind of a street coming in. It was just a dirt road, really, but they cut it in, and then we packed it all down so that I could get the speed to make the jump across. And so it was a tough deal and an ordeal that we had to think about way ahead of time. And once I got the dirt road in and I knew that I could get the traction, then I knew, okay, if the speed's right, I know I can make it across to the other side. So those were the things that we had to kind of tackle before we could decide on whether we could do it or not.
Okay, yeah, and we also have a couple of funny features here. We have your jacket, I think, hanging out the window.
Yeah, that was a wardrobe guy that came in right at the last second, and I was already tied into the car in my jump harness with my helmet on. I've got this big neck collar on, and he came in and said, you have to have the black jacket on. And I was looking at, I've got a harness on, and I've got a helmet on, and I've got everything else. And so he just kind of stuck the jacket around my harness and the things. And obviously it flew out of the car because of the speeds we were doing.
Yeah. But this is a real legendary jump. Do you know, is it the longest that you did on the show?
Yeah, this one went about 140 to 145 feet, if I remember right. But it hit really hard because the ground on the other side was soft. And so, when it hits hard like that, the impact is a lot harder on your body. Yeah. And so this one, I was seeing stars at the end of this one. And, it was, I kind of had a mild concussion. It was a hard hit.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Thanks for taking that.
You go back to that last shot, the still shot. I don't know if you can go back to that. You can see the camera shot when I'm in the air. Having that tree behind me gives you an idea just how high the car was, because I don't have any room for error here because of the distances over the ravine. If I'm short at all, probably would have killed me, because you can't go from 70 miles an hour to nothing without having some kind of problems. And so I knew I had to clear the ravine. And so I was going a lot faster on this one than I normally go. Yeah.
We have a short fight scene as well. I included that just for you to talk a bit about how you would prepare for a scene like that, with David also coming in and having to fight some of the bad guys. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, usually in the fight scenes, it's not like what we do fight scenes today. Back then in television, you really didn't rehearse much of the fight scenes when it was something as simple as what you see here. And so David would come in just when we're getting ready to shoot it, and we'd say, let's spend 10 minutes and rehearse the fight. And so he had to learn the fight in 10 minutes with the double while they're setting up cameras. And if he didn't know it, we just shoot it in pieces. But usually David picked up things very quickly because he'd done so many fight scenes. And, we would put the double in when we needed to do the wide shot, and we put David in for most of it because, most times we knew David knew fight scenes well enough to get through them. And he's usually a stunt guy or an actor doubling the other guy. And it went pretty flawlessly most of the time with David because he was so good at these things.
Okay, let's move on then. Yeah, he's getting the final knock right there. Now we're coming to another great turbo boost scene that I know that you have also a lot to say about. This jumping over the Mercedes. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a tough one.
You were also in the Trans Am.
Yeah, it was when they set this one up. It was essentially the same jump as we did before, but with a mirror and everything when I jumped over the General Lee. But in this one, they wanted it in a convertible Mercedes, which gives the stunt guy no protection whatsoever, but he's coming at me. So it's a little different when he's coming at me. And, I had the same guy that was in the other General Lee, Mike Tillman, and he said that, when I hit the ramp, there was so much dust on the ramp that he thought I destroyed the ramp, and he was expecting me to just land on top of him or run or crash into him head on. But luckily I got over the top of him and everything was fine. But we did add a lot of dust on the ramp because it was a dirt road, and it just makes it look really cooler to see a big plume of dust come out behind the car.
Yeah, it really does. This is really a great looking turbo boost, because you're flying over there.
And you got to look at, him being in the car, he has absolutely no protection whatsoever. And it was a tough jump because you're coming in, you got to think about it. I'm coming at the ramp at 70 miles an hour and he's coming at me at probably 50. And the timing's got to be absolutely perfect.
Yeah.
And so that's the hard part about doing those types of things, is that I had told him ahead of time that if it looks like you're going to be late, just dive out to the right and I'll land next to you.
Yeah.
But if you look like you can do it, if he's early, then it's even worse because he's got to dive out and not be underneath me, and I've got to do the jump over again. Luckily, this was a one taker, so it worked very well.
Yeah. How about the landing? Because we have a blooper clip where KITT gets a real tough landing after this. The landing that is used in the show, is that just a small turbo boost done to make a good landing?
Yeah, that one right there is just me coming off a set of mini ramps, little bitty short, small ramps that'll just get the car up in the air about 3 feet.
Yeah, here we see the original landing.
Yeah, that's the hard landing. That was a really nose end high hard landing.
How would it typically be after a turbo boost? Would you be able to reuse the cars? Here we have a
no. They have to. The frame's bent. The whole front end's gone. The radiator's gone. Usually the engine is pushed back into the firewall, so there's not much left of the KITT car after that.
So you wouldn't send it to a repair shop. You would just use another car for the next.
Yeah, they take off as many pieces as they think they can salvage and just trash the rest of the car.
Yeah. So okay, great, and I think great photos here as well. Also of the ramp with the mirrors.
With the mirrors, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's move on. I think we have a couple of pics from this fantastic turbo boost as well.
Yeah, car's pretty high in the air.
Yeah, definitely is. Did you drive the Hero car a lot, or was that strictly for David?
I drove it, usually once every episode I would do something in the Hero car, just a quick drive up and slam on the brakes or something, go around a corner. But driving that big T, steering wheel was tough to do stunts with, because if you had to make a turn tight and everything, it just was always hard to grab onto and hard to do the kind of things they needed.
Yeah.
But I did drive the car a lot. But like I said, we only had one of them.
Yeah. So and now we see KITT taking off, and the windows are tinted. I guess that makes it more easy to to drive the car.
To hide the blind drive seat.
So you were sitting up in this stunt car.
Yep, and with no air conditioning in the middle of summer, and it was pretty hot. But it's one of those things that the blind drive seat, that's got way too much tint on it, I think they went away from that after a while because the tent was so obvious.
Yeah.
But once they found out the blind drive seat worked pretty well, they went away from the tent.
Yeah, 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 and it did. We're gonna see some scenes as well where you are, where KITT is moving fantastically with on auto cruise. So yeah, and now we have the jump. This is also a very long turbo boost.
Yeah, yeah. The construction site was a really long one as well, and it was a tight alley again. They tended to like the look of these tight alleys, and so we keep getting the location guys coming up with these things that were, at least this one there, when I got to the other side, it had some dirt in there and it wasn't as hard a hit as I expected it to be, so it just bounced a lot.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have anything to say regarding the site of the stunts? Were there any instances where you could say, this I cannot do here, I can do it on another side, but I can't do it here?
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of times where they would take me. Usually I would get to scout the locations a week before we shot them. And so I would go off on a day that was, that had very little action in it. And I would go off with, the director of the next episode, and we would scout these locations. And usually he'd say, here, we have 3 different jump sites. Which one works best for you? Yeah. And I got to pick whichever one I think would give them the most bang for their buck. And usually this one was really good because when they were going to set up the construction site, I loved the flow of the trees around in the background. And I loved the fact that it was colorful. And, sometimes you had to just take what they would give you. But most of the time they would give you some suggestions as to what works best for you and what can you make from one side to the other, because we just didn't have a whole lot of time to set all this stuff up. Oh. And so you had to kind of do it on the fly and do it as quickly as you could. A lot of this was about how much run up do you have? Yeah. Can you get the speed you need to make the jump across the other side? And so that had a lot to do with it.
So we're coming to another fantastic scene. First of all, an auto cruise with KITT being blind driven, and then we have a guy flying out of this balcony. I don't know if you know the guy.
No, this was the one that I hit really, really hard. It was a hard one on me because we put we put the KITT car up on a car carrier, a two double stacker car carrier. Like cars are parked on the bottom of the car carrier and they have another level where cars are parked on the top, and we parked that in front of the building, and then we shot over KITT from a side angle and made it look like KITT was on the ground. And then we put the airbag behind the car carrier, and I landed in the airbag. But the director kept saying, I can see that your body is laying back as you go to hit the airbag, so I need you to land feet first. And that didn't really go well for me. On that one, I hurt myself, and it was hard going. You can't really go into an airbag feet first without doing damage from 6 stories up. So, the first couple of takes I did the jump into the bag, I landed on my back, which worked great. But this one, you see, I go past the car feet first and I hit pretty hard. So yeah. I didn't really want to do that one again.
No. Fantastic. Yeah, we see the seat coming up, and yeah.
Yeah, that's just David jumping in from about 3 feet above the car.
Yeah, of course. Always the easy work on for the actor. You're the guy making him look good. So okay, we have a scene from the early part of the show. I'm not sure that you were a stunt coordinator on as early in the episodes as this. Do you remember your tasks during this scene?
Yeah, some of the earlier ones in the first year, it was Bob Braver that was the stunt coordinator for a lot of these earlier ones, and then. Like for that, we were shooting out at Indian Dunes and Valencia for a lot of the explosions and a lot of the fire stuff. So, those kind of things took place early in the show. And it was still, we were trying to get a feel for what KITT could do and what KITT couldn't, and how much we can really get away with without blowing the car up.
how would you practically do a scene like this? You know, the car is driving and you have explosions all around it. Have you never experienced a problem and an explosion going off right where the car is?
Yeah, I mean, we had to find out how well the car was sealed even from underneath it and from in the door wells and on the windows and everything, because these were mostly gas explosions, gasoline explosions, with a thing called naphthalene, which is kind of a sticky substance that when it blows up, it sticks to the car and gives you a nice big orange flame. And so, you know, we had to check out the car way ahead of time and make sure that the fire couldn't get to me on the inside. And I had a fire extinguisher in the passenger seat in case I did get fire inside the car, but luckily it was sealed pretty well. And the guy you see inside the helicopter that's shooting at me, he's a stuntman named Alan Gibbs, who was very, very famous in the stunt world. And he doubled Burt Reynolds on a lot of his stuff in Smokey and the Bandit.
Okay.
And so that guy was a very, very famous stuntman that worked on Knight Rider.
Okay. So yeah, we have Michael getting up here. In a scene like this, where we see Michael getting up, I would guess that the car is being towed here.
Yeah, when we're doing this shot, I did a lot of blind driving with Hasselhoff's double. I can't remember whether that was Tim Gilbert or someone else, but I was blind driving the car there.
Yeah. As
they made the transfer, and then when you see David do it, we're towing the car.
Yeah, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah, yeah. Right. Yeah, and we still have a lot of shooting and a scene like that up in the helicopter. Would that take any different kind of preparations from a fight scene on ground?
Yeah, I mean, with the helicopter stuff, we did a lot of stuff testing just ahead of time to say, show us what you can do with nobody in it and nobody around, and we'd clear everybody out in a way, and we'd see what the helicopter pilot could do for us safely, and then we'd say, okay, here's where we can put cameras, and here's what we can do, and here's where the guy's going to fall out. And so that was something that you had to set up ahead of time and see. I wish I could remember the name of the helicopter pilot. Do you remember the name of the helicopter pilot?
No.
Yeah, I probably could look it up and find out, but he passed away just after probably a year after Knight Rider ended its series.
Okay. Yeah, but every time you did a stunt scene with a helicopter, would that be a new helicopter pilot coming in that you would have to adjust to, or to see what can this guy really do?
No, I mean, we would always bring in the same helicopter pilot that we used on every single one of them. So, I was always using the same guy because I trusted him. And let me look up real quick and see if I can remember what his name was. Yeah, Alan Purwin, I think, was his name.
Okay. Yeah.
Alan Purwin was a guy that we used back then, and it was, you always wanted to use the same guy because you knew that you trusted what he could do when he could hit his marks. And, when you see a shot like that with a helicopter being completely out of control, you have to be really, really careful about where he goes and how wide the spinning is, and if he loses control of the helicopter and you've got guys in the water, that's even more difficult. So,
of course.
Back in the early days of Knight Rider, we were still doing really radical stunts, and so it was tough to try and put it all together, to be safe for everybody.
Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Here we have another jump above another car, and yeah, this is also a close one. I don't know if you remember this, flying over the Chevy.
Oh yeah. So this one was one where I was directing second unit and the stunt coordinator, and I had my brother do this jump, Andy. Andy came in and did this jump, and this was tough because of the dust. The dust was so heavy. It was hard to see anything, and we wanted him to jump over the car, and he had to land right in front of him. And oddly enough, we had Mike Tillman in the car in front of him again because he jumped over Mike for so many times. But Andy had to drop this car in before the electrical wire. So it was a really tough timing thing, but it absolutely worked perfectly. And Andy did a great job, and Mike did a great job, and it was a one-taker.
Can you maybe talk a bit about the change in your role during the show, going from being a stunt man to being a stunt coordinator and also second unit director? Can you talk a bit about the different tasks in those?
Yeah,
roles?
I mean, when you make the transition from being a stunt man to the stunt coordinator, you have to understand that now you're not only handling just the stunts that you're involved in, but all the stunts in the entire show, and you have to protect the crew as well as the cast. And so, you know, there's a lot more stress involved in it, obviously, and you have to understand that you're not only coordinating everything around you and those stunts, but every other character in the entire show. So it's a lot more to try and, you know, do at one time. And then you have to add on that I was the second unit director as well, which is the action director. So they would have a completely different crew that would go out and shoot all the action. And so I have to talk to all the camera people and my cameraman and everything and tell them where to put cameras and how to place them to capture the best angle for the stunts. And it's a lot to do. And that's one of the reasons I brought in my brother Andy to try and drive the car, because I just couldn't do all those things all at once. And Andy came in trying to relieve some of that pressure and drive the car for me. So, you know, it was a tough thing to do. And in today's world, they don't really allow you to wear all three hats, to be a stunt man and stunt coordinator and stunt double all as one thing. You have to pick one and just do that job. So back in the 80s, we could do all three jobs, but it was very stressful.
Yeah. Okay, we're just gonna see Andy's magnificent jump here again. If I can get this to work, yeah. Yeah,
this was the timing. This was probably one of the most difficult timing tasks, because there is a real electrical wire out there in front of the two cars, and he has to land over the car and directly in front of the electrical wire so that the effects can set it off. And, you know, you can see how close it is, because he literally is just over the top of the car when he hits in front of him. Yeah, most people think that we added the electrical wire later, but you can see in that wide shot, you can see the two poles that are up there, and he lands right in front of it. Yeah, that was a great jump. Really, really great jump.
Fantastic, yeah. So, yeah, coming to the last scene that we do in this conversation. It's from the episode Killer KITT, and it's also, I think, a magnificent scene with Michael jumping out of KITT and KITT attacking Michael and driving with Michael on his hood into a shed or into a kiosk or something. Yeah. So Jack, which role did you play in this scene? Do you remember that?
Yeah, I mean, I was doubling Hasselhoff driving the car, and I was also blind driving the car. And then once he got outside on the car and was holding on, that was a stuntman named Matt McComb. And Matt was holding on to the car when we drove through the shed. And I think some of those shots ended up in our Christmas reel because they were kind of funny.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's Matt McComb jumping out and doing the role.
Now, look at this 180 blind drive 180. You're doing just in a few seconds. I can watch that again and again and again. How was that even possible? You were able to look out of the windows, but you really had to know your way around there.
Yeah, you have to kind of gauge how far you think the back end is going to spin out, because we had parked cars on both sides, and that's the tough part about it, is you have to kind of guess where the back end is, because you can't look in the rearview mirrors. There's no way to do it.
No.
You see the skid marks ahead of time when I was skidding through there before.
Yeah. How many takes would you use in order to?
We did 2 or 3 takes for that one, only because we wanted to move cameras around and do another piece. But every single one of them worked pretty well.
Yeah.
I did put Hasselhoff on the car here and do a bunch of shots of him on the car. We put him in a harness and tied him to the car so that he couldn't fall off. But there were a lot of times of me in there and David yelling at me going, go slower. And I was going as fast as I could go to try and make it look great. But it was funny because he would only say, go slower after we cut. He would never say it during the shot. And I was always have fun to him going back to number 1 to where we could set the shot up again. And I would go just as fast to number 1 and he would start screaming at me again. So we had a lot of fun doing it.
No, I think this particular part also shows something about the precision work. You're blind driving KITT, and yeah, I guess you don't want to hit the stuntman. Yeah,
that's the tough part about it, is that usually I'll lock up the back brakes and spin it around David, but the stunt guy I know I can get really close to because he'll get out of the way if he has to, and I just don't know that. I want to trust an actor to do that because we just can't replace, David Hasselhoff.
Oh. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, these were fun little spins.
And we have you coming
jump going through into that parking lot. The bounce was pretty harsh. And I had done it with the stuntman, and then David said he wanted to do it. And I said, we can't come in at the speeds that I came in with the stunt guy because your face is going to hit the windshield. So we'll do it slower with you.
But the stuntman is really taking some tough beating.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got him going into the shed here. What would a shed like that be made of? What type of material?
It's lighter plywood. It's still wood. It's still plywood, but it's thinner plywood. And we don't have any nails in it. We hot glue it together so that the nails can't stick the stunt guy. And it's still wood, and still wood gets splintered and can hurt you. But luckily, there's no nails and there's a heavy roof. All that's taken away, and there's just a lot of lightweight stuff in there that we crash into. Yeah.
Okay, we end off with a couple of pictures of the inside of the cars. Can you talk a bit about what it is we see here?
Yeah, that's the extended steering wheel. We had to get that back there when I'm blind driving so that I could grab on, and the pedals have a big extension on them as well. I kind of had to shift it into gear and into reverse. I could always get to the shifter without having to put any extensions on it. But I had to have these extensions on the steering wheel and on the brake and accelerator pedal because there was just no way to get to them.
Oh, yeah.
It looks like there's a lot of dust on the inside of the car.
Yeah, it does.
I crashed through the wall or something.
Yeah, when you're a fan of the show, I have people coming up to me when they see my replica, asking, is this one of the real cars? And of course I say no, it's not. But I don't think many people realize how beaten up the cars were, even the hero car. So yeah.
Yeah, they did. They took a beating. It's hard to even, when you think about what the audience sees and what I'm driving is usually what I'm driving is something that, has probably been a stunt car for an entire season. And so it's pretty beaten up on the inside because of all the things we've done.
Yeah. So, yeah. Here we also have a stunt car. I think this is the right hand blind drive car, and we get it from a different angle in the next picture. So we can really see all the work being done on the right side of this car.
Yeah, and I had an adjustable blind drive. That telescope you see over there, I could drop it down just above my thighs so that any side angle you couldn't see my steering wheel. So it was adjustable up and down. Not in and out, but up and down. Yeah. And you can see up in the top, it was chain driven. You can see the chain that it would go to another chain to go to the steering wheel on the other side. And so it was a 1-to-1. When I turned it, it operated exactly as if you were in the other side.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, I think the last picture is of some of the switch boxes.
The line lock.
Yeah.
Yeah, the line lock is the switch you see on the left-hand side, and then the black button is a buzzer, and I could hit the buzzer, which would ring loud, and I knew I had the line lock on, and the line lock would only allow me to lock up the rear brakes so that I could spin the car around, and then I could kick the switch off, which gives me all 4 brakes again. But sometimes I couldn't see the switch because I had the material in front of my face for the blind drive seat, so that's why I needed the buzzer so I could know when I had the line lock on and off.
Yeah, yeah.
Then the box you see up there is for the scanner.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay, Jack. Maybe I have a couple of questions before we end this. First of all, any memories regarding problems with the cars not working, and how was the cars to drive? You know, you drove the Dodge in the Dukes of Hazzard. How was it driving a Trans Am compared to the Dodge?
Well, it's a lot. You have a lot less suspension than we did in the General Lee. So the hits were a lot harder. The jumps were, they hit so much harder than the jumps I did in the General Lee. And so you had to kind of say, if you can get a dirt landing for me, that really helps. Dirt does help, the compression part of it because it gives a little bit. Concrete just does not give at all. And, one of the things we always worried about was the front end coming off the car, because if the entire front end comes off in the jump, it's not usable. And I've got to do the jump again because we just didn't have CGI back then. So we really had to make sure that everything was screwed in or taped on so that it couldn't come off in the jump. And oddly enough, you did see some things come off, but I got to say, in most of the jumps, the body did stay together in the air. Yeah. And that was something that was critical because I didn't want to do the jumps twice. No. So the car really held together pretty well, but the suspension was lacking because I only had about 4 inches of suspension in the KITT car, whereas I had about 6 or 8 in the General Lee.
Yeah, yeah. Do you remember anything regarding the cancellation of Knight Rider?
No, I mean it was tough when we knew we were in our last year, and they told us we were in the last 2 episodes that we were not going to get picked up, and it was tough because we were a family. Everybody was very close knit, and we all worked together day in and day out, and so it was tough to see everybody go on to bigger and better things. But all things do have to end. And I would love to see a Knight Rider movie. I think a Knight Rider, feature film would be a great thing to see. And I think you could make it a little darker and make it a little more like a Batman. And it could probably be a great franchise. So I hope Universal does get the idea to make Knight Rider a feature film and make it a franchise, because I'd love to reboot it and come straight off of Fast and Furious and do all the Knight Rider movies. So might be something we're looking forward to.
Yeah, I'm sure that a lot of fans will love that as well, Jack. Jack, thanks so much. It's been brilliant talking to you. Thanks for all the insights and thanks for all the thrills that you've given us.
Sure, I appreciate it, Jacob. Thanks for the interview.
Hello, friends. It's me, KITT. When I'm not out fighting crime, I like to follow my friends at knightriderhistorians.com. Check it out.